February 1, 2026. A quiet Saturday night in Tucson, Arizona. An 84-year-old woman sits down to dinner with her son-in-law in the home where she has lived for decades. They talk. They eat. He leaves. And by morning, Nancy Guthrie has vanished without a trace. But this is not just another missing person case. Because when investigators walk through Nancy's front door the next day, what they find transforms a disappearance into something far more sinister. Her medical pacemaker, the device keeping her heart beating, lies disconnected and abandoned on the floor. Security cameras positioned throughout her home have been deliberately destroyed. A trail of blood leads from inside the house to the back door, which stands wide open to the desert night. And here is what makes every investigator's blood run cold. There is no forced entry. Not a single window broken. Not a door kicked in. Whoever came into Nancy Guthrie's home that night either had a key or she let them in. Now before we go any further, if you are new to this channel, welcome to the Case Files Collective, where we do not just tell true crime stories. We investigate them. We dig into the evidence. We question the narratives. We search for truth in cases that leave more questions than answers. Hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications because we cover cases that demand your attention, cases that challenge everything you think you know about crime, justice, and the people we trust. And trust me, the Nancy Guthrie case will make you question everything. Here is what you need to understand about this story. This is not just about an elderly woman who disappeared. This is about a family torn apart by suspicion. This is about a son-in-law who went silent the moment police started asking questions. This is about a daughter, Savannah Guthrie, one of America's most recognizable journalists, forced to step away from the Today Show to search for her own mother. This is about evidence that points in every direction and nowhere all at once. This is about a man who stayed quiet for months while the world screamed for answers and then suddenly, unexpectedly, decided to speak. In this documentary, we are going to walk through every minute of the night Nancy Guthrie disappeared. We are going to examine the crime scene that investigators found the next morning. We are going to look at the doorbell camera footage that captured a masked figure moving through the darkness with chilling precision. We are going to explore the 3 ransom notes that appeared demanding payment in untraceable Bitcoin, only to be exposed as cruel fakes. We are going to talk about Tomaso Cion, the 63-year-old academic who was the last confirmed person to see Nancy alive, who held power of attorney over her finances, who closed a garage door 3 days before she vanished and blocked a security camera's view. The same man who hired a criminal defense attorney and refused to answer a single question when investigators came calling. But most importantly, we are going to examine what happened when Tomaso finally broke his silence. After months of speculation, after a media firestorm, after becoming the most suspected man in America, he sat down for his first public interview. And what he said changes everything about this case. His explanation for why he went silent. His account of that final night with Nancy. The details he revealed that were never made public. The inconsistencies he admitted to. The innocence he maintains to this day. By the end of this story, you will have all the evidence. You will understand the timeline. You will know what investigators found and what they are still searching for. And then you will have to decide for yourself. Is Tomaso an innocent man railroaded by circumstance and suspicion? Or is he exactly what millions of people believe him to be? Nancy Guthrie is still missing. Her family is still searching. And someone, somewhere, knows exactly what happened on the night of February 1, 2026. Let's find out who. The sun rises over Tucson on February 2, 2026, and someone walks into Nancy Guthrie's home expecting to find her going about her morning routine. Maybe making coffee. Maybe sitting in her favorite chair. Maybe getting ready for church the way she had every Sunday for decades at St. Philip's in the Hills Episcopal Church. But Nancy is not there. And what they find instead will haunt investigators for months to come. The back door is open. Not just unlocked but standing completely open, as if someone left in a hurry, or as if someone was taken. The Arizona desert stretches out beyond that doorway, vast and unforgiving, full of places where people disappear and are never found. But it is what is inside the house that tells the real story. Nancy's pacemaker lies discarded on the floor like a piece of refuse. This is not just any medical device. This is the mechanism that keeps an 84-year-old woman's heart functioning properly. Without it, Nancy's life is in immediate danger. And whoever removed it knew that. Security cameras had been scattered throughout Nancy's home. At least they were before that night. Now they are destroyed. Smashed deliberately. Someone took the time to locate every camera, to disable each one, to make absolutely certain there would be no video record of what happened inside these walls. That level of awareness, that kind of planning, does not come from a panicked intruder. It comes from someone who knew the house. Someone who knew where those cameras were positioned. Someone who had been inside before. Then there is the blood. A trail of it leading from somewhere inside the home toward that open back door. Not pooled. Not the kind of volume you would see in a violent attack. But enough. Enough to make investigators' stomachs drop. Enough to know that Nancy was injured. Enough to suggest movement, like someone walking or being moved while bleeding. The forensic team collects samples immediately. They photograph the pattern. They analyze the trajectory. And when the DNA results come back, they confirm what everyone already feared. It is Nancy's blood. But here is the detail that makes this entire scene even more disturbing. Nancy had a dog. A companion animal that lived with her, that would have been in the house that night. And dogs bark. They bark at strangers. They bark at danger. They bark when something threatens their owner. But according to neighbors, there was no barking that night. No sounds of distress. No indication that anything was wrong. Which means one of two things. Either the dog knew whoever came into that house, recognized them as safe, as family, or someone knew exactly how to keep that animal quiet. Investigators begin processing the scene with the kind of urgency reserved for the worst cases. They dust for fingerprints on every surface. They collect fiber evidence from furniture, from doorways, from anywhere someone might have touched or brushed against. They examine the back door for signs of forced entry, for pry marks, for anything that would indicate someone broke in. And they find nothing. The door was not forced. The locks were not broken. The windows are intact. Every entry point to Nancy's home is secure, untouched, which brings investigators back to the same inescapable conclusion. Whoever did this either had a key or Nancy opened the door for them. Within hours, the Tucson Police Department has transformed Nancy's home into a full crime scene investigation. Yellow tape goes up. Forensic vans arrive. Detectives begin canvassing the neighborhood, knocking on doors, asking if anyone saw anything unusual the night before. Strange cars. Unfamiliar people. Anything out of place. But this is a quiet residential area. People go to bed early. And if something happened in the dead of night, most of Nancy's neighbors were sound asleep. The FBI gets involved almost immediately, and that tells you everything you need to know about how seriously this case is being taken. This is not just a local missing person investigation anymore. This is federal. The White House is notified because Nancy is not just any elderly woman. She is the mother of Savannah Guthrie, co-anchor of NBC's Today Show, one of the most visible journalists in America. And when someone connected to that level of prominence disappears under circumstances this suspicious, resources get mobilized fast. Investigators begin pulling security footage from neighbors' homes, hoping someone else's camera caught what Nancy's destroyed cameras did not. They are looking for vehicles, for people, for any movement in the hours before and after Nancy vanished. They start building a timeline minute by minute, trying to establish when Nancy was last confirmed alive and when she disappeared. And every piece of evidence, every forensic detail, every witness statement keeps pointing them toward one unavoidable question. Who was the last person to see Nancy Guthrie alive? His name is Tomaso Cion, 63 years old. An academic. A teacher. A scholar who spent his career in education, someone who built a life around knowledge and intellect. Born in Italy, he came to America and eventually married Annie Guthrie, one of Nancy's 5 children. He was not a stranger who drifted into this family. He was part of it. He sat at holiday tables. He attended family gatherings. He was someone Nancy trusted. And on the night of February 1st, 2026, he was the last confirmed person to see her alive. The timeline is documented. Tomaso orders an Uber around 7 in the evening. The destination is Nancy's home in Tucson. The ride is logged, timestamped, recorded in a digital trail that investigators will later scrutinize down to the minute. He arrives at Nancy's house while it is still light outside. According to what investigators pieced together later, this was meant to be a routine visit. Dinner together. Checking in on her. The kind of thing families do when they have an elderly parent who lives alone. Nothing about the evening was supposed to be unusual. Tomaso spends several hours at Nancy's home. They eat dinner together. They talk. We do not know what they discussed. We do not know if Nancy mentioned feeling unsafe or if she expressed concern about anything. We do not know her state of mind during those final hours because the only person who could tell us is Tomaso, and he is not talking. What we do know is that late in the evening, sometime around 9 or 10, Tomaso calls another Uber. He leaves Nancy's house. The ride is documented just like the first one. He goes home to the residence he shares with Annie, Nancy's daughter. And according to those Uber records, that is where he stays. Nancy is alone now. An 84-year-old woman in her home at night. And at some point between Tomaso's departure and the morning of February 2nd, everything goes catastrophically wrong. But here is where the timeline gets murky. Tomaso's Uber records show he went home. There is no digital evidence of him calling another ride back to Nancy's house. There is no record of him using a car service. No GPS data showing his vehicle moving. So either Tomaso stayed home like the records suggest, or he found another way to get back to Nancy's house. A way that left no trace. Now, being the last person to see someone does not make you guilty. In most missing person cases, there is always a last person. A final conversation. A final goodbye. It is just circumstance. But what matters is not simply that Tomaso was the last person with Nancy. It is what happened in the days before she disappeared. 3 days earlier, on January 28th, Tomaso did something that would later raise investigators' eyebrows considerably. He closed Nancy's garage door. And that garage door blocked the view of her Ring doorbell camera. You might think that is nothing. People close garage doors. It is perfectly normal. But context matters. Nancy had security cameras specifically because she lived alone. Those cameras were her eyes when she could not see. They recorded activity around her property. They provided a digital record of who came and went. And that garage door, when closed, created a blind spot. It cut off the camera's field of vision. So when investigators later try to piece together what happened in those final days before Nancy vanished, there is a gap. A period of time where the camera that should have been recording was not capturing anything useful. Then there is the matter of power of attorney. Tomaso had legal authority over Nancy's financial affairs. This is a common arrangement in families. When parents age, when they need help managing bank accounts and bills and investments, someone has to step in. Tomaso was that person for Nancy. He had access to her accounts. He could make decisions about her money. He could transfer funds, pay bills, handle her entire financial life. And while millions of families have similar arrangements without any problems, it becomes deeply relevant when that parent suddenly disappears and the person with financial control is the last one who saw her alive. Investigators begin looking into Tomaso's background. They pull his records. They interview people who know him. They try to build a profile of who this man really is. What they find is a man with no criminal history, no history of violence, no red flags that would suggest he is capable of harming anyone, let alone his wife's elderly mother. He is educated, well-spoken, someone who spent his life in classrooms and lecture halls. On paper, Tomaso Cion is the last person you would suspect of being involved in something like this. But investigations are not about what things look like on paper. They are about evidence. They are about opportunity and access and motive. And Tomaso had all three. He was at Nancy's home the night before she vanished. He had access to her house, her routine, her vulnerabilities. And he had control over her finances. So when investigators reach out to him, when they ask him to come in for an interview, when they request that he help them understand what Nancy's state of mind was during those final hours, his response shocks everyone. He hires a criminal defense attorney. And he stops talking completely. While investigators process Nancy's home, while forensic teams collect blood samples and dust for prints, while detectives canvass the neighborhood, one piece of evidence survives the destruction. The doorbell camera. Despite whoever came into Nancy's home knowing where the interior cameras were located, despite them smashing every single one, the doorbell camera at the front of the house captured something. And when the FBI's technical team retrieves the footage, what they see sends chills through everyone who watches it. A figure moves through the darkness. Masked. Gloved. Dressed entirely in black. This is not someone stumbling around in panic. This is not someone improvising. The movements are deliberate, calculated, purposeful. The figure approaches Nancy's property with the confidence of someone who knows exactly where they are going. They move toward the door with precision. And then the footage cuts out because that is when the cameras inside were destroyed. But those few seconds of video tell investigators everything they need to know about intent. This was planned. This was premeditated. This was someone who came prepared. The FBI analyzes the footage frame by frame. They use enhancement software trying to pull any identifying details from the grainy image. They measure the figure's height based on proportion to known objects in the frame. They study the gait, looking for anything distinctive in how the person walks. They examine every visible piece of clothing for logos, for brands, for anything that might narrow down identification. But whoever this person is, they were careful. The mask conceals their face completely. The gloves hide their hands. The dark clothing reveals nothing. You cannot tell if it is a man or a woman. You cannot see hair color or eye color. You cannot identify any distinguishing features. But you can see knowledge. You can see that this person knew Nancy's property. They knew where to go. They knew what cameras to destroy. And that knowledge points unmistakably to someone familiar with the house. Someone who had been there before. Someone who understood the layout well enough to move through it in darkness and systematically disable security measures. The FBI releases the footage to the public, hoping someone will recognize something. A posture. A movement pattern. Anything at all. The tip lines light up with calls, but most lead nowhere. Without a clear image, without identifying features, connecting this masked figure to a specific person is nearly impossible. Then the ransom notes appear. 3 of them, all delivered separately, all demanding payment in Bitcoin. The notes are specific. They claim to have Nancy. They threaten her life if the demands are not met. They set deadlines. They apply pressure. And for a brief, tense moment, investigators have to consider the possibility that this is a legitimate kidnapping for ransom. But something does not add up. Ransom notes in genuine abduction cases typically include proof of life. A photograph. A video. A recording of the victim's voice. Something to prove the captors actually have the person they claim to have. These notes contain nothing like that. No proof. No evidence. Just demands and threats. Investigators analyze the language used in the notes. They examine the handwriting. They attempt to trace the Bitcoin wallet addresses. And the more they dig, the more convinced they become that these notes are not real. The details are wrong. The demands are inconsistent with one another. And most importantly, the notes do not match the crime scene. Kidnappers who want money keep their victims alive and healthy. They do not remove pacemakers. They do not leave blood trails. They do not destroy evidence. Unless the notes are meant to be a distraction. Unless someone is trying to make this look like a kidnapping when it is really something else entirely. The FBI tracks down the source of the ransom notes and makes an arrest. But the person they catch has no connection to Nancy's disappearance whatsoever. They are an opportunist, a scammer who saw a high-profile missing person case and tried to exploit it for financial gain. It is despicable, but it is also a complete dead end. The notes were fake. The ransom demands were fraudulent. And while investigators wasted precious time chasing this lead, whoever actually took Nancy had more time to cover their tracks. So investigators refocus. They go back to the evidence that matters. The crime scene. The timeline. The last person to see Nancy alive. And that brings them directly to Tomaso Cion's door. They need to talk to him. They need him to walk them through that final evening in detail. They need to understand what Nancy said, how she seemed, whether she mentioned feeling unsafe or worried about anything or anyone. They need Tomaso's cooperation because right now he is the only person who can fill in the gaps in their timeline. But when detectives reach out, when they ask Tomaso to come in for an interview, his response tells them everything they need to know about where this investigation is headed. He does not agree to talk. He does not offer to help. He does not provide any information about Nancy's state of mind or what they discussed that night. Instead, he hires a criminal defense attorney. One of the first things his lawyer does is advise him to invoke his Fifth Amendment right to remain silent. And Tomaso follows that advice completely. Legally, this is his right. You do not have to talk to police. You do not have to answer questions. The Constitution protects you from self-incrimination. Invoking your right to an attorney does not make you guilty of anything. Defense lawyers will tell you that innocent people should hire attorneys too because the justice system is imperfect and one wrong word can destroy your life. But here is the reality of how it looks to the outside world. An 84-year-old woman is missing. Her pacemaker was removed. There is blood at the scene. And the last person who saw her alive will not say a single word to help find her. The public reaction is immediate and brutal. If Tomaso is innocent, people ask, why will he not cooperate? If he has nothing to hide, why hire a criminal defense attorney? If he cares about Nancy, if he wants her found, why refuse to help investigators piece together what happened? The questions pile up. The suspicion grows. And with every day that passes without Tomaso speaking, the court of public opinion moves closer to its own verdict. Cable news covers it relentlessly. True crime podcasts dissect his silence from every angle. Social media explodes with accusations. And Tomaso Cion becomes the most suspected man in America without ever being formally charged with a crime. Investigators do not stop. They cannot compel Tomaso to talk, but they can investigate him. They execute search warrants on his home. They go through his property looking for anything that might connect him to Nancy's disappearance. Clothing with blood evidence. Financial records that might reveal motive. Electronics that might show incriminating searches or communications. They are looking for the smoking gun, the piece of evidence that transforms suspicion into proof. But what they find, if anything, has never been made public. Then on February 10th, 9 days after Nancy vanished, something happens. Tomaso is pulled over during a traffic stop in Rio Rico, Arizona. That is a small community near the Mexican border, about 60 miles south of Tucson. When officers run his information, flags go up immediately. Every law enforcement officer in Arizona knows the name Tomaso Cion by now. He is detained and brought in for questioning. For the first time since Nancy disappeared, investigators have him in a room. But even then, even with his attorney present, even with investigators trying every approach they can think of to get him to open up, Tomaso remains silent. He does not answer questions about the night Nancy disappeared. He does not provide alibis. He does not offer theories about what might have happened. He exercises his right to remain silent with absolute discipline. And after several hours, without enough evidence to hold him, police have no choice but to let him go. No charges are filed. No arrest is made. Tomaso walks out of that interrogation room and goes home. But the detention sends a clear message to everyone watching this case. Investigators believe Tomaso knows something. They believe he is involved. They just cannot prove it yet. And until they can, all they have is suspicion, speculation, and a family desperate for answers that may never come. On February 3, 2026, just 2 days after her mother vanished, Savannah Guthrie steps in front of a camera. But this time she is not anchoring the Today Show. She is not delivering the morning news to millions of Americans with her usual composure. This time she is on the other side of the story. This time she is begging for help. The video is raw in a way that professional broadcasts never are. You can see the exhaustion carved into her face, the sleepless nights already etched beneath her eyes. You can hear her voice breaking as she fights to hold herself together. She looks directly into the camera and pleads with anyone who might be watching. "Please," she says, "if you have any information about where my mother is, please come forward. My mother needs her medication. She needs her pacemaker. She needs help." The video goes viral within hours. It is shared across every platform, viewed millions of times. And for a moment, the entire country stops and pays attention to Nancy Guthrie. Savannah takes a leave of absence from the Today Show. She steps away from the career she has spent years building because finding her mother is the only thing that matters now. Her co-anchors announce her absence on air with visible emotion. America, which has watched Savannah deliver the news every morning for years, now watches her live through a tragedy no one should have to endure. Her siblings rally immediately. Nancy has 5 children and they mobilize together with fierce determination. They organize search efforts across Tucson. They coordinate with law enforcement. They put up billboards across Arizona showing Nancy's face with a simple, urgent message. "Have you seen this woman?" The billboards spread to neighboring states, to major cities across the country. The Guthrie family is using every resource at their disposal to make sure Nancy's disappearance is impossible to ignore. The family offers a reward. $50,000 for information leading to Nancy's whereabouts. The FBI matches it, doubling the total to $100,000. Now there is real financial incentive on the table for anyone with information. Tips flood in from across the country. People report possible sightings. They share theories, suspicions, fragments of information. But none of it produces the breakthrough investigators desperately need. Vigils are held at St. Philip's in the Hills Episcopal Church where Nancy worshipped for decades. People who knew her gather to light candles and pray. They remember Nancy as someone who showed up, someone who volunteered, someone who was woven into the fabric of their community. Now they are showing up for her. Search parties comb through the Arizona desert in brutal heat, covering miles of unforgiving terrain, looking for any sign of where Nancy might be. Local businesses put up flyers. Nancy's face appears in shop windows, on community bulletin boards, on the screens of phones across the nation. Tucson refuses to let her be forgotten. But beneath all this community support, there is a darker reality tearing the Guthrie family apart from the inside. Because one of their own is the prime suspect. Annie Guthrie, Nancy's daughter and Savannah's sister, is married to Tomaso Cion, the man who was last with their mother. The man who will not talk to investigators. And Annie is caught in an impossible position. Does she stand by her husband? Does she believe in his innocence even when everything looks damning? Or does she side with her siblings, with the investigators who believe Tomaso knows more than he is saying? We do not know. Because Annie, like Tomaso, has stayed silent. She has not done interviews. She has not made public statements. She has not appeared at press conferences alongside her siblings. Her absence creates its own questions, its own painful void. This is the tragedy within the tragedy. If Tomaso is guilty, Annie loses both her husband and her mother in a single devastating blow. If he is innocent, the family has spent months suspecting the wrong person while the real perpetrator walked free. Either way, the damage is done. The trust is broken. The bonds that held this family together have been tested beyond what any family should ever have to endure. And through it all, Nancy remains missing. Every investigation eventually reaches a point where detectives step back and ask themselves one critical question. What actually happened here? In Nancy Guthrie's case, that question produces three distinct theories, three different explanations for how an 84-year-old woman vanished from her own home. And depending on which theory you believe, Tomaso Cion is either a calculated killer, an innocent man being destroyed by circumstance, or someone trapped by a terrible decision he can never take back. The first theory is what most people believe. Tomaso did it, and the motive is money. He had power of attorney over Nancy's finances. He controlled her accounts, her assets, her entire financial life. With Nancy gone, he potentially stands to inherit or maintain control over her wealth. The evidence supporting this theory is considerable. Tomaso was the last person to see Nancy alive. He was at her home the night before she disappeared. He knew the house layout intimately. He knew where security cameras were positioned. 3 days before Nancy vanished, he closed the garage door, blocking the Ring camera's view. That looks like preparation. There was no forced entry, meaning whoever entered Nancy's home either had a key or she let them in. Tomaso had both access and her trust. Then there is his behavior afterward. He immediately hired a criminal defense attorney. He refused to cooperate with investigators. He would not answer even the most basic questions about that final evening. His silence looks like guilt to nearly everyone watching. Multiple search warrants were executed on his properties. He was detained near the Mexican border 9 days after Nancy disappeared. Every piece of circumstantial evidence points directly at him. The second theory tells a completely different story. Tomaso is innocent. He is a scapegoat caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. The Uber records prove he left Nancy's home and returned to his own residence. There is no digital evidence of him going back. No second ride. No GPS data showing his car moving. The timeline simply does not support him being present when Nancy actually disappeared. This theory argues that someone else waited until Tomaso left, then made their move, knowing full well that suspicion would fall on the last person who saw her alive. Maybe someone else wanted Nancy's money. Maybe the masked figure on the doorbell camera is not Tomaso at all. Maybe someone deliberately used his visit as cover for their own crime. And his silence? Innocent people get convicted every day. The justice system makes mistakes, sometimes catastrophic ones. Once you are labeled the prime suspect in a high-profile case, once millions of people decide you are guilty, clearing your name becomes nearly impossible. Maybe Tomaso hired an attorney because he is terrified. Maybe he knows that one wrong word, one misremembered detail, could send him to prison for something he did not do. Maybe his silence is not guilt but survival. The third theory falls somewhere between the two extremes. The accident theory. Maybe Nancy had a medical emergency that night. Maybe she fell. Maybe her heart condition caused a sudden crisis. And maybe someone, possibly Tomaso, possibly another family member, panicked. Instead of calling for help, they made a terrible decision. They staged the scene to look like a kidnapping. They removed the pacemaker to make it appear sinister. They created a false narrative hoping investigators would search for an intruder instead of looking at family. This would explain the blood trail without requiring a violent attack. It would explain why there was no forced entry. It would explain the strange staging elements that do not fit typical kidnapping scenarios. And it would explain why someone with no history of violence might find himself at the center of a criminal investigation. Not because he is a killer, but because he made a catastrophic choice in a moment of panic and now he is trapped by it. Each theory has supporting evidence. Each has logical gaps. Investigators have followed leads in every direction. They have interviewed witnesses who support different narratives. Without Tomaso's cooperation, without Nancy's body, without definitive evidence that eliminates doubt, any of these theories could be true. The public divides sharply. Some are absolutely convinced Tomaso is guilty. Others believe he is innocent and that the real perpetrator remains free while the investigation fixates on the wrong man. Some think the truth is more complicated than either extreme allows. What everyone agrees on is this. Someone knows what happened to Nancy Guthrie. Someone has answers that could solve this case. And until that person speaks, Nancy's disappearance remains exactly what it has been since February 2nd. A mystery with too many questions and not enough answers. Months pass and the pressure on this case becomes unbearable from every direction. The media circus does not slow down. It intensifies. Cable news covers Nancy's disappearance with relentless focus. True crime podcasts release episode after episode, dissecting every detail from every conceivable angle. Online communities dedicated to solving the case grow to thousands of members who spend hours analyzing evidence, building timelines, and debating theories with passionate conviction. Nancy's face remains everywhere. On billboards. On social media feeds. On missing person websites. The story refuses to fade from public consciousness because Savannah Guthrie's platform ensures it simply cannot be ignored. Investigators continue working behind the scenes with quiet determination. They re-interview witnesses, hoping someone remembers a detail they initially forgot or dismissed as unimportant. They send evidence back to forensic labs for reanalysis using newer technology. They follow up on every tip that comes through the hotline, even the ones that seem unlikely, because in cases like this, the breakthrough sometimes comes from the most unexpected source. The FBI maintains its involvement, dedicating resources that most missing person cases never receive. But despite all this effort, despite all the attention and manpower, the investigation keeps hitting the same wall. Without cooperation from the one person who can fill the gaps in the timeline, meaningful progress stalls. The Tucson community refuses to give up. More vigils are held. More search parties are organized to comb through areas that have not yet been examined. Local volunteers create a systematic grid search of the desert surrounding Nancy's home, marking off sections as they are cleared. It is grueling, punishing work in the Arizona heat, but people keep showing up. They keep searching. They keep hoping that maybe today will be the day they find something that breaks the case wide open. Nancy's church community continues praying for her safe return, though privately many have begun praying simply for closure. For answers. For an end to the not knowing. Tomaso Cion remains under intense scrutiny. Cameras follow him whenever he leaves his home. Reporters camp outside hoping for even the briefest statement. Online communities track his movements, his routines, his daily activities with obsessive attention to detail. He is living under a microscope, watched by millions who have already rendered their verdict. The psychological weight of being America's most suspected man, even without formal charges, has to be crushing. But still he does not speak. Still he maintains his silence. And that silence, more than any single piece of evidence, convinces people he has something to hide. Then something unexpected happens. A documentary crew produces a film about Nancy's disappearance. It is thorough and comprehensive, and it does not conceal what the filmmakers believe happened. The documentary presents the evidence against Tomaso methodically and persuasively. It walks through the timeline with precision. It highlights every suspicious detail. It interviews experts who explain exactly why his behavior points toward guilt. And it essentially accuses him directly of being responsible for Nancy's disappearance. The documentary airs on a major streaming platform. Millions watch it. The public pressure on Tomaso reaches an absolute breaking point. That is when Tomaso Cion makes a decision that shocks everyone who has been following this case. He files a massive defamation lawsuit against the documentary makers. The lawsuit claims they presented false information, that they destroyed his reputation without sufficient evidence, that they accused him of a crime he did not commit. But more importantly, the lawsuit signals something else entirely. Tomaso is done staying silent. He is ready to fight back. And he is ready to tell his side of the story. For the first time since Nancy disappeared, Tomaso agrees to a public interview. Not with law enforcement. Not with investigators who want to build a case against him. But with a journalist who will broadcast his words to the world. The announcement sends shockwaves through the true crime community. After months of impenetrable silence, after refusing to answer even the most basic questions, Tomaso Cion is finally going to speak. The interview is scheduled. Cameras are set up. And America holds its breath, waiting to hear what the most suspected man in the country has to say about the night Nancy Guthrie vanished. When the interview airs, Tomaso appears calm but visibly exhausted. The months of scrutiny have aged him in ways that are impossible to hide. He sits across from the interviewer, and for the first time, he tells his version of events. He explains that the evening of February 1st was completely normal. He had dinner with Nancy. They talked about family, about everyday things, about nothing remarkable. Nothing seemed wrong. Nothing suggested Nancy was in danger or distressed in any way. When he left that night, she was fine. She walked him to the door. She said goodbye. And that was the last time he saw her. The interviewer asks the question everyone wants answered. Why did you not cooperate with police? Why hire a lawyer and go silent when your mother-in-law was missing? Tomaso's answer is measured and deliberate. He explains that his attorney advised him that in high-profile cases, innocent people become targets. He says he was terrified of being railroaded, of having his words twisted, of being convicted in the court of public opinion before any facts were properly established. He admits that it looks bad. He acknowledges freely that his silence created suspicion. But he maintains it was the only way to protect himself from a system he had come to distrust. Then he addresses specific pieces of evidence. The closed garage door 3 days before Nancy disappeared. He explains he closed it because it was making noise in the wind and was bothering Nancy. It was a favor, not a conspiracy. The power of attorney over her finances. A normal arrangement, he says, that millions of families make for elderly parents who need help managing their affairs. He shows records of every transaction he made on Nancy's behalf. All of them legitimate expenses related to her care and household needs. The lack of forced entry. He points out that this proves nothing about who took Nancy. Multiple people had keys to her home. Family members. Friends from church. Trusted neighbors. The absence of broken locks does not prove he is guilty. It only proves that whoever entered knew Nancy or had access. But then the interviewer presses him on inconsistencies. Small details in his account of that evening that do not quite align with what investigators found at the scene. Tomaso admits there are things he got wrong initially. Times he misremembered. Details he confused or transposed. He is 63 years old, he says. And that night has been replayed in his mind thousands upon thousands of times until he is no longer entirely sure what he actually remembers versus what he has reconstructed from fragments of memory and imagination. But he insists that these inconsistencies do not equal guilt. They mean human memory is imperfect, especially under extraordinary stress, especially when the same memories are revisited obsessively over months. The interviewer asks him directly, "Did you harm Nancy Guthrie? Did you have anything to do with her disappearance?" Tomaso looks straight into the camera and says no. Absolutely not. He loved Nancy. She was family. The idea that he would hurt her is incomprehensible to him. He understands why people suspect him. He understands the evidence looks damning from the outside. But he swears on everything he holds sacred that he had nothing to do with what happened to her. And he says he wishes more than anything that he could help find her, but he does not know where she is. Near the end of the interview, Tomaso reveals something that has not been made public before. He describes Nancy's demeanor during that final evening in vivid detail. He mentions specific conversations they had, things Nancy said about her plans for the following week. He talks about her mood, her health, her mental state. And he provides details that, if verified, could either powerfully support his story or raise entirely new questions. He mentions that Nancy received a phone call while he was there, though he does not know who it was from. She stepped away briefly, spoke quietly, and returned to dinner without explaining the call. He describes hearing a noise outside the house that made Nancy pause during their meal, though she dismissed it as neighborhood cats and they continued eating. He recalls that she seemed slightly distracted after that call, though not frightened. More preoccupied, as if something was weighing on her mind that she chose not to share. These details, if they check out, could fundamentally change the investigation's direction. They could point toward someone else being involved. They could suggest that Nancy was already concerned about something before Tomaso even left that night. Or they could be fabrications, details carefully manufactured to create reasonable doubt and redirect suspicion away from himself. Investigators will have to verify every claim he has made. They will have to check phone records to determine whether Nancy did receive a call that evening and who it came from. They will have to recanvass neighbors, asking specifically if anyone heard unusual noises around the time Tomaso describes. Every detail he provided becomes a new lead to chase down, a new thread to pull. The interview ends with Tomaso making a direct appeal. He asks whoever took Nancy to come forward. He says if she is still alive somewhere, please let her go. Please let this family finally have closure. And he addresses Nancy directly, saying that if somehow she can hear this, people are looking for her. Her family has not given up. He has not given up. And he is sorry. Sorry that his silence made him look guilty when he was only trying to protect himself from a system he did not trust. Public reaction to the interview divides immediately and sharply. Some people watch it and feel their suspicions thoroughly confirmed. They believe Tomaso is lying, that his explanations are too convenient, too polished, that guilty people always have perfectly reasonable explanations for incriminating evidence. Others watch the same interview and begin questioning whether they have been wrong about him all along. Maybe he truly is innocent. Maybe he is a man who made terrible decisions out of fear and watched those decisions spiral into a nightmare he could not escape. Maybe the real perpetrator is still out there, undetected and unpressured, while the entire world focused its rage on Tomaso. Before we wrap up this case, let me ask you something. Where are you watching this from right now? Drop your location in the comments. I want to know where Nancy's story has reached, how far her case has spread across the world. And while you are down there, tell me what you think. After hearing everything we have covered today, after examining all the evidence, after listening to Tomaso's interview and weighing his words against the facts, do you believe him? Is he innocent or guilty? The comment section is going to be intense on this one, and I want to hear every perspective. Here is where the case stands today. Nancy Guthrie is still missing. No body has been found. No additional evidence has emerged that definitively proves what happened to her on that February night. Tomaso Cion has not been charged with any crime. He remains free, living under the permanent shadow of suspicion but legally innocent in the eyes of the law. The investigation remains open and active. The FBI continues working the case with dedicated agents. Savannah Guthrie continues searching for her mother with the same determination she brought to her career. The $100,000 reward remains unclaimed, waiting for the person brave enough to come forward with the truth. Tomaso's interview changed the conversation around this case, but it did not solve it. His explanation satisfied some people and enraged others in equal measure. The inconsistencies he admitted to could be innocent mistakes born of stress and time, or they could be carefully crafted lies designed to create just enough doubt to keep him free. The new details he revealed could be genuine memories that open new avenues of investigation, or they could be manufactured alibis constructed over months of silence and preparation. Without independent verification, without corroborating evidence, his words remain just one more piece of an impossibly complex puzzle. What we know for certain is this. On February 1, 2026, an 84-year-old woman disappeared from her Tucson home under circumstances that strongly suggest foul play. Her pacemaker was removed from her body. Her security cameras were methodically destroyed. Blood evidence indicates she was injured. And despite months of intensive investigation, despite federal resources, despite massive and sustained public attention, no one knows where Nancy Guthrie is. The masked figure caught on camera has never been identified. The person responsible for what happened that night has never been caught. And a family remains shattered by questions that have no answers, by a wound that cannot heal because it has never been given the chance to close. This case represents everything that is frustrating and heartbreaking about true crime. Sometimes evidence points in clear directions but cannot produce charges. Sometimes the most obvious suspect remains exactly that, just a suspect, because suspicion alone is not proof and the law demands more than what people feel in their bones. Sometimes families are torn apart not just by the original tragedy but by the investigation itself, by the suspicion that poisons every relationship and turns loved ones into strangers. And sometimes, despite everyone's best efforts, despite the resources and the attention and the desperate wanting, the truth stays hidden in shadows that no amount of light seems able to penetrate. If you have made it this far, you are invested in finding answers just like Nancy's family is. So here is what you can do right now. Share this video. Share Nancy's story. Keep her case alive in the public consciousness because attention matters. Cases that stay in the headlines, cases that people refuse to forget, are cases that eventually get solved. Someone out there knows something. Someone saw something. Someone has a piece of information they have been holding on to, maybe not even realizing its significance. Subscribe to this channel if you have not already because we do not walk away from cases like this one. We keep covering them. We keep investigating. We keep pushing for truth until we find it, no matter how long it takes. And if you know anything about Nancy Guthrie's disappearance, if you have information you have not yet shared, if you saw something that night or in the days before, please contact the FBI. The tip line is still active. The reward is still available. Your information, even if you think it is insignificant, even if you are not sure it matters, could be the missing piece that finally solves this case and brings a family the answers they deserve. Nancy Guthrie deserves to be found. Her family deserves to know what happened. And justice demands that whoever is responsible faces the consequences of what they did. This case is not over. Tomaso's interview is not the end of the story. It is just another chapter in an investigation that continues every single day, worked by people who have not forgotten and will not stop. Somewhere, someone knows what happened. Somewhere, the truth exists, whole and complete, waiting to be spoken aloud. And we are not stopping until we find it. Thank you for watching. Thank you for caring about Nancy. And thank you for demanding that cases like this one do not get buried and forgotten beneath the weight of newer headlines and fresher tragedies. Hit that like button if this story affected you. Drop a comment with your theory. And I will see you in the next case. Because there is always another mystery. Always another family searching for answers. Always another truth waiting to be uncovered. Nancy Guthrie, wherever you are, people are still looking for you.